Good afternoon. We'd like to welcome you to the 2025-26 New Coordinator Training Webinar Series brought to you by the California Department of Education. This is the first one, and we're kickstarting, the new year, if you will. We have a total of 11 webinars, and so this is webinar number 1, and we hope to see you at all 11. That said, my name is Paul Valencia, and I'm going to be your producer for today's webinar. And today we're going to focus on the initial ELPAC, or the English Language Proficiency Assessments for California, and what we need to be thinking about now for the summative ELPAC. Before I hand it over to our presenters, let's go over a few housekeeping items. First, all participants are muted. In order to submit your questions during the presentation, you may use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Please do not confuse this with the chat. For this webinar series, we will be using the Q&A feature only, okay? And second, a copy of today's resource guide was sent to you via email if you haven't received it, or you need to access the resource guide again. I'm going to place a link in the chat box, and hopefully you can access it that way. And by clicking on the link, it will take you to a folder where you can download the guide or make a copy into your own Google Drive. Just please be aware that there's no edit access from the link we shared, so you'll have to make your own copy, okay? And third, at the end of the webinar, you'll be directed to a post-training evaluation. And if you could please take a few minutes to provide some feedback, we would really appreciate it. This helps us with future trainings. And lastly, we will be recording today's presentation. An archive of this presentation will be available to view on the upcoming and on-demand trainings webpage on the CAASPP and ELPAC website. And with that, I'd like to introduce today's expert panelists. We have with us today Jadine Jones from Sacramento County Office of Education, and Stephen Bartlett from Los Angeles County Office of Education.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Today, our agenda is going to align with the success criteria for the webinar. So we're going to take a look at the things we will be able to do by the end of our session today. You should be able to understand and explain initial ELPAC information, including purpose, timing, and test design. Prepare for initial ELPAC testing. Know how to prepare for the summative ELPAC and tasks that will need your attention early in the school year. Understand the ELPAC AST requirements. That's the administration and scoring training requirements. And we'll get answers to all your questions. We also want to take a minute to talk through the new coordinator trainings for 25-26 school year. Last year, these trainings transitioned from full-day sessions to a more flexible and accessible model, providing asynchronous resources through 11 webinars spread throughout the year. This revised format enables us to deliver personalized support and valuable insights to coordinators precisely when needed. We anticipate this expanded webinar structure will significantly shape the NCT experience, elevating the quality of learning, all while offering enhanced flexibility to accommodate varying schedules. The following pieces are included in the new coordinator training as asynchronous or on-demand pre-work. The pre-work is optional and is meant for those who need additional information. Pre-work includes 2 asynchronous videos included in the NCT playlist. The first video, Resources, introduces agencies, websites, manuals, flyers, and other materials that support coordinators. The second pre-work video, The Coordinator Role, introduces permissions and access available to the LEA coordinator as well as site coordinator and test administrator roles. Additional pre-work is available. The past Assessment 101 training video gives the who, what, when, why, and how of each assessment, and the Introduction to SIRS trainings, which take place in summer and fall. And then we have the fall new coordinator convenings coming up this September. These 3 in-person meetings will be held in the northern, central, and southern parts of California. They are designed to support and guide brand new CAASPP ELPAC coordinators. They're focused on providing essential knowledge, practical tools, networking opportunities, and registration will be opening soon. The rest of the new coordinator training program is a series of monthly webinars designed to give just-in-time information. The full list of sessions is in the resource guide, but let's review what we'll talk about today and what is coming in the next few months. Today, we are focusing on initial ELPAC and summative ELPAC preparation. Coming up in webinar number 2 at the end of June, we will talk about managing users. And in July, the topic for webinar number 3 will be receiving scores. Before we jump into today's topic, we want to remind everyone about a few excellent resources for coordinators. Links to these resources are in your resource guide. The first are the coordinator checklists. There is one checklist for each program for LEA coordinators, as well as checklists for other roles. Each checklist includes an extensive outline of the tasks and activities that are part of your new role. The tasks are listed by month, where they're most likely to occur, but some tasks may occur in other months, depending on your local schedule and plans. They're created in Microsoft Word, which allows you to customize them to fit your LEA's needs. And then the second set of resources is the new Coordinator How-To Hub. This is a page on the new website that collects all existing how-to resources and organizes them by time and by topic. If you ever get stuck, this is a great starting point. Let's start with the initial ELPAC. We want to start with a reminder about the purpose of the initial ELPAC, which is vastly different from the summative ELPAC. We will go into more detail about the summative later in the presentation. The initial ELPAC is a screener, which means it is a short assessment designed to determine whether a student is an English learner or not. It assesses English language proficiency in 4 domains based on California English Language Development Standards: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The initial ELPAC is administered to students within 30 calendar days of their first enrollment in a California public school, if they have not taken the ELPAC before, have not been classified as an EL before in California, are in kindergarten or above, and have a home language survey which identifies a primary language other than English or American Sign Language. Let's look at the timeline. Within 30 calendar days, the student must be identified. The parents or guardians are notified of testing. The student must be assessed with the initial and the assessment scored, and then their results are reported to parents. Let's walk through an example of a student who is eligible for the initial ELPAC. Please note the full process can be found in the ELPAC information guide, which is linked to in your resource guide. In our example, a student enrolls in kindergarten in your district. CalPADS is checked to see if the student was already enrolled in the California public school by checking that there is not an existing SSID and ELAS for the student. In our example, they were not previously enrolled anywhere in California, have no SSID, and no English Language Acquisition Status, ELAS. Since this is the student's initial enrollment in a California public school, parents or guardian complete the home language survey. In our example, a language other than English is indicated on the home language survey. Your CalPADS coordinator will then create an SSID and then input to be determined, or TBD, and the student's primary language other than English or ASL that was identified by that home language survey as the English Language Acquisition Status into CalPADS. That TBD status in CalPADS triggers the eligibility to test with the initial ELPAC in the testing system. After you have the SSID number and know that a student is eligible to be tested, you will need to schedule a time to test them. It will take about 24 to 48 hours once the student is enrolled in CalPADS with a TBD in the ELAS field before they will appear in the testing systems and be able to test. Once testing is completed, The scores need to be entered into the system and the parents notified of the results. This all needs to be completed within 30 calendar days of enrollment. Reminder, initial ELPAC testing can begin starting around July 1st. Please note that date changes a little each year, depending on when the holiday and system rollover occurs. This means that students can be tested prior to the start of the school year if the student is pre-enrolled ahead of time in CalPads. The initial ELPAC is between 35 and 37 questions, depending on the grade level. For this year, the initial ELPAC has been refreshed for the 25-26 administration and ongoing. It will test those 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Speaking and writing are scored locally, and the scores are entered into systems, while the listening and reading are computer scored. Kindergarten through grade 2 will be administered one-on-one, except grade 2 writing, which can be administered in small groups of 10. Grades 3 through 12 will be administered one-on-one for the speaking domain, and the remaining domains can be administered in a group setting of no more than 20 students to 1 examiner. A proctor is required for each additional 20 students. The initial ELPAC is a computer-based assessment, except for the K2 writing domain, which is taken in a paper test booklet. Please note that the K2 writing domain is still considered part of the online test. Okay, so now let's talk about how to prepare for testing. There are 4 major tasks that districts will need to complete in order to prepare for initial ELPAC testing. Here are the 4 major tasks: order materials for K through 2 writing, verify or create SSIDs, schedule testing, and plan for data. The first task is ordering of the K through 2 writing materials. All new materials for the initial ELPAC must be ordered for the 25-26 school year. LEAs cannot use last year's materials as the test has been refreshed. Beginning the following year, in 26-27, unused 25-26 materials from this upcoming year will be able to be used. Most districts submitted an order for 25-26 initial ELPAC materials in April or May of this year. Supplemental orders can be placed by the LEA ELPAC coordinator in TOMS. The second task is to make sure all students have SSIDs generated in CalPads. This means that the student's enrollment information must be collected and entered ahead of testing, including the TBD status required for testing. The third task is scheduling testing. Districts will need to plan on how to handle testing in the summer if they're doing summer testing, another plan for testing when school starts, and a plan for testing throughout the year. And the fourth task, after initial ELPAC testing has been completed, is to manually pull the English language acquisition status, ELAS data from CalPads, into local student information systems, the SIS, and other data systems. Also keep in mind that 10% of LEAs are annually selected to participate in the Rotating Score Validation Process, RSVP. These identified LEAs return their scannable kindergarten through grade 2, K through 2 writing answer books after testing. To prepare for the ELPAC, all LEA coordinators and test examiners must complete the Administration and Scoring Training, or AST, requirements for this year. This is managed in the AST website. Then, training is done within the Moodle training site, or Moodle for short. Let's start with the requirements for you, the LEA ELPAC coordinator. If you are an LEA ELPAC coordinator, you will get an email from elpac@scoe.net with a link and an access code. The link takes you to the AST website, and the access code allows you entry. Inside the site, you will be able to select the Initial ELPAC Moodle Training Site Resources button. First, you, the LEA coordinator, will copy the enrollment key for the correct LEA certification course. Please note there is one enrollment key for K through 12 and another one for those LEAs with students only in grades 6 through 12. Then you will log into Moodle, create an account if needed, and complete the initial ELPAC LEA certification course in Moodle using that correct enrollment key. This course is an excellent overview of what needs to be done for the ELPAC administration. ELPAC regulations mandate annual training, and we strongly recommend that you complete this yourself, even if someone else at your LEA has completed it. Your next step is to give your test examiners access to Moodle. Before sending out the enrollment key, it is important to note that a Moodle user account is necessary for test examiners. There are two ways to create Moodle user accounts. Either the LEA coordinator populates a template for upload, or individuals create their own accounts. Those test examiners who possess accounts from a prior administration year in your LEA will have an existing account they can use when completing Moodle training this year. The Moodle training site user guide contains a lot of helpful and detailed information and is a great resource for understanding how to navigate and use the platform effectively. Then the link is in your resource guide. Back in the AST website, you'll need to copy your enrollment keys for the Test Examiner Training and Calibration Moodle course. It will be your role as the LEA coordinator to distribute this enrollment key to your test examiners and ensure all test examiners have access to Moodle. Under the enrollment key section of the AST website, you will see the LEA Moodle Reporting Access section for trainers. Here, you can assign up to 3 users access to the test examiner completion status. You, or these 3 users, will monitor completion to ensure all test examiners complete the scoring calibration for the grade levels they will administer. Chapter 3 of the Moodle training site, User Guide, Monitoring Training Completion Status, shows how to access Moodle reporting tools. Navigating the Moodle reports will take some practice. If you need any assistance with this, email Moodle support at scoe.net for support. And that email address is also in your resource guide. So now you have distributed these enrollment keys for the Test Examiner Training and Calibration Moodle course and are ready to monitor Moodle course completion. But what does completion look like for your test examiners who have the enrollment key and are ready to take the Moodle course? Well, let's talk about who is required to take the Moodle calibration. If you are administering the speaking section, which is scored in the moment, or are scoring the writing section, you are required to complete the Moodle calibration. Note that for K through 2, it is a combined calibration, but for grades 3 through 12, they are separate courses, depending on which segments of the test need to be calibrated. Anyone else who is administering the ELPAC but not administering speaking or scoring writing will need to be trained, but how they are trained is a local decision. LEAs could select parts of the Moodle training for their test examiners to complete, or could choose to hold a local training. Be prepared to support test examiners as they navigate through the training materials. Learn your LEA's existing system for collecting completion certificates that are generated in Moodle. If there's no system, you will want to develop a system that works for your LEA. From experience, there's a few helpful tips that we might have. Even if I was going to have the test examiners complete training online in Moodle, for example, we'd all meet during a meeting to do that online training together. That way I could make sure that everyone is able to log into Moodle and initiate the course that we've distributed the key for. Do you have any examples of helpful tips, JD?
Yeah, Stephen. I actually do things a little bit differently in that I have our staff complete Moodle individually, and I do a group training, and then they Moodle, verb, I guess, on their own afterwards.
Thank you. All right, so let's review the testing resources that are available. The directions for administration, DFAs, for the initial ELPAC include the scripts and instructions needed to administer the assessment. They also contain all information on entering scores for speaking and writing domains, which are scored locally in the moment. These are published securely in TOMS, where you access them under the Resources tab in the top navigation bar. Please note all DFAs are secure materials. They must be destroyed after usage for the 25-26 school year. PFAs, the Preparing for Administration for Initial ELPAC, provide the instructions and guidelines for planning and preparing to administer the assessment. These are non-secure documents that are posted on the Manuals and Instructions webpage on the ELPAC website, which is linked to in your resource guide. In the online CAASPP and ELPAC Manuals library, you'll find the ELPAC Online Test Administration Manual, or OTAM, the alternate ELPAC OTAM, and the CAASPP and ELPAC Scoring and Reporting Guide. For more information, there's a link in the resource guide. After all domains are completed, scored, and entered, it will take the system a few hours before the student score is available. Initial ELPAC results will automatically update CalPads. Although TOMS will automatically update the ELAS status in CalPads, it will not automatically update your local SIS. Be sure to have a process in place to enter this information in your local SIS. Then we have to notify the parents of the results of the initial ELPAC. The student score reports are available in TOMS. A data file is available in TOMS that can be used with the parent notification letter template that reports initial ELPAC results. This letter template is created by the CDE and housed on the Multilingual Support Division webpage at the link in the resource guide. Remember, the notification is part of that 30-day timeline for initial ELPAC testing. And then I'm going to hand it over to you, JD.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it so much. So going forward from here, remember that the initial ELPAC will occur throughout the year, and it will be important that the district monitors testing to make sure students are not missed. There are two ways to monitor test completion. A simple view will be on the dashboard when you sign into TOMS. We often refer to it as the TOMS dashboard. This will give you a quick view to see where you are in testing and show if you have students that aren't tested yet. You can also use the test completion rate section, and you can see a percentage of students there tested by the initial ELPAC by domain. More detailed information is available from the completion status link on CAASPP-ELPAC.org website, or you can also get there from the TOMS Links tab. Under the Plan and Manage Testing section, you can drill down to see specific students who have not tested yet. For students that enter the district after the summative ELPAC has started, things can get a little tricky. It will be important during this time frame that you have a plan in place and someone monitoring the data to verify EL status of your students. So a student could enroll in January and then become eligible during the summative ELPAC window. If an eligible student is given the initial ELPAC during the summative window and is determined to be an English learner, then they must also be administered the summative ELPAC by the end of the window, which is May 31st. And that's the deadline for the summative. So just to restate that a bit, a student enrolls and they're determined to be EL, and this could be after February 1st when the summative window opens. They will take both tests in the year if they're determined to be an English learner, the initial and the summative. Doesn't happen a lot, but it happens occasionally, so be aware of that. And in order to be ready for next year, there's important things to do to get prepared for the summative ELPAC. Remember, the LEA coordinator job is never done. There's lots to do. So we've mainly been discussing the initial LPAC, which is used to determine whether a student should be classified as an English learner. So we're going to focus our shift a little bit to the summative LPAC. The purpose of the summative LPAC is to monitor the progress of students who have been identified as English learners. It helps us understand how well students are developing proficiency in English over time. Only, pardon me, only students classified as English learners are required to take the summative LPAC. They must participate annually until they meet the criteria for reclassification. Unlike the initial LPAC, the summative LPAC is comprehensive. It's a full assessment. It is designed to evaluate students' performance across all 4 domains of the English language development. This includes listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Each domain provides insight into how students are progressing in the specific areas of language, whether they are understanding spoken English, expressing themselves verbally, reading with comprehension, or writing effectively in English. The testing window for the summative LPAC runs from February 1st through May 31st, providing ample time to complete the assessment for all eligible students. Even though the summative LPAC doesn't start until February 1st, there's still work you can do as the LEA coordinator to do early to be a part of planning for the summative LPAC and to get ready for testing. This includes things like planning for when the LPAC will take place, ordering materials, and planning for summative LPAC administration, scoring, and training, also known as the AST. When looking at the timeline for assessment, as well as other statewide assessments, you may be thinking, oh, timelines overlap. Well, because the LPAC window overlaps with other assessments, coordination is key. Some LEAs may choose to test early in the window to avoid conflicting test schedules and to get earlier individual student results to help facilitate reclassification. The sooner we test with the summative LPAC, the earlier individual student results will start to roll in from the state. The sooner LEAs return the K through 2 writing answer books, the sooner ETS is able to complete the quality control process to release the SSRs, or the student score reports. Other LEAs may wait and schedule LPAC during CAASPP testing to minimize the loss of instructional time. This is a local decision. It's important to note that the summative LPAC window doesn't close until May 31st. So if a new EL student enrolls at any point in the window or is identified as an EL based on the initial LPAC or initial alternate LPAC, they must also be assessed with the summative LPAC assessment. So if you don't wear both hats for CAASPP and LPAC coordinator, be sure that you're working closely with the CAASPP coordinator, if you're the LPAC coordinator, so that you can coordinate your testing schedules. A link to the assessment timeline is included in the resource guide. The timeline gives you the full picture of the California assessment system. And also, I want to just give you a little commercial here. There are some videos on the CAASPP-LPAC website. There's a YouTube website, and you can look at other coordinators sharing their experiences through YouTube videos. So check that out. There's a link in your resource guide to help you find it. So both the initial and the summative ELPAC require the use of a paper answer book for the kindergarten through grade 2 writing domain. For the purpose of today, we are assuming your initial ELPAC materials have been ordered, so we're going to focus on summative ELPAC. However, if needed, you can find more information on supplemental initial ELPAC ordering at the link in your resource guide. So, how do I order my materials? ELPAC materials are ordered within TOMS. You select the Order tab from the upper navigation bar in TOMS, and this will be the start of your process. As an LEA, you'll need to set up your non-delivery dates in TOMS, and this allows ETS to know when LEAs are open to receive orders. After non-delivery dates have been set, you will access the Primary Order tab or Place Supplemental Order tab on the navigation bar up at the top. When determining the number of books to order, use the current enrollment and enrollment history data of your LEA. TOMS has a file called Material Count Template that you can download to validate order numbers. This can also be accessed on the Place Primary Orders page. It is important to only order the number of materials that you will need. Order overages may result in additional costs to the LEA. The current charge of the materials are about $2.50 per booklet, so overage costs can add up quickly. It is best to be conservative when ordering and use the supplemental order option as needed. Supplemental orders arrive quickly. And now, if you're wondering how overages are determined, it's based on the number of students tested compared to the number that was ordered. So please note that LEAs are provided with a 5% overage during the primary order window, and this is not counted in the overage. You can also view and track your orders in TOMS under the View and Track Orders in the upper navigation bar. One other thing we want to touch on is the Summative ELPAC Administration and Scoring, or AST. Much like the initial ELPAC AST, you will need to certify separately for the Summative ELPAC. And your staff will need to train and calibrate for the Summative ELPAC, just like for the initial. Typically, the Moodle course will open in fall around mid-October, and your LEA certification will be due sometime in early December. Keep an eye out for emails with exact dates. Only LEA training is required to be completed by December date. The test examiner, or TE training, needs to be completed prior to administration of testing. The LEA training is the responsibility of the LEA, while the TE training is the responsibility of the LEA's ELPAC coordinator or a designee. LEA training is broader, encompassing the LEA's overall responsibilities for the ELPAC administration, while test examiner, or TE training, is more focused on the specific tasks of administering and scoring. So this seems a little bit early, and we're mentioning it now so that you can set up your meeting schedules and prepare for staff so that there's time to complete training prior to test administration. As always, we want to remind you to review the coordinator checklists for all of the tasks that take place during the year. Today, we touched on the important tasks to get a head start, but this list will have everything that you need to plan for a successful test administration year. And don't forget, that link is in your resource guide. So we have one last thing to do before we get to your questions, and that is to assign you homework. I know, it's June and we're giving you homework. I want to promise we're not assigning busy work. Instead, we aim to direct your attention towards the tasks that have specific next steps for you to complete. So we want you to do these two things for your homework. Download the coordinator checklist. We want to emphasize how these detailed checklists are extremely helpful to new coordinators and even to veteran coordinators. The second is related to Moodle. We want you to determine your LEA's process for collecting completion certificates and monitoring completion of the Moodle training. If your LEA does not have a process, then it's time to develop one. So now we want to answer your questions, any questions that you may have, and then we'll spend the next part of the training answering your questions. So let's get started to see with what questions may have come in. And if you have a question, please enter it into the Q&A box. So Paul or Stephen, are there any questions that you would like to call out, answer verbally? Looks like pretty much everything has been answered in the Q&A box.
Several questions have been answered in the Q&A box. I'll go ahead and read out loud a few of the answers. Is the presentation available afterwards? And the session is being recorded, and there is a resource guide packed full of additional information, and the PowerPoint should be posted as well. And there's a question about the 30-day calendar count, which you responded to. The 30 days starts on the first day of school. If the student is pre-registered, let's say, for example, you have an incoming student who's registered for summer testing, that 30-day calendar day count does not start until the first day of school. One question I answered was about whether the videos show where buttons are in TOMS. I believe this is addressing some process type questions in TOMS where a series of clicks might happen, or for example, when discussing the DFAs, we mentioned that that was on the resources tab. There are several videos on the CAASPP and ELPAC YouTube site that start with the word TOMS : and those videos tend to have click-throughs that are very helpful in seeing a button click walkthrough of how to get from the start screen to several different facilities.
All right, I see one, Stephen, I could take. Moodle completion certificates. Question is, do these need to be submitted to ELPAC or just saved by the LEA? And the right answer is just saved by the LEA, right? Moodle can monitor that on the back end, but as an LEA, it's your responsibility to be monitoring and tracking those completions. So just keep those. So thank you for that question. Here's another question. How do we score the writing section for the students for K-2? So that's where your Moodle training comes in, right there. You will need to get the keys. You're the LEA coordinator. You need to go through and complete the Moodle training on how to do that. There's calibration regarding that. And I saw a shout out that said they love the resource guide. So great. That's the work of Paul and his team. Thank you for that.
I answered that. I put that in with a link to that resource guide.
let's see.
Is
Here-
there a training for the initial alternate ELPAC? There is a Moodle training, separate Moodle trainings for the initial ELPAC and the initial alternate ELPAC. And those are available. If a test examiner will be administering one of them, they would need to train on those separately and individually, as well as if you have students who will be taking the initial alternate LPAC in your LEA, or traditionally you serve students who need to take that assessment, you would need to do the LEA certification course for each of those separate assessments.
And there was an email that came out April 30th regarding the alternate and initial, and that came out from California Outreach. So if you want to search your inbox or the LEA coordinator about that, so that you will have the access keys. Let's see. So here's a question. It says, for Moodle, I noticed when teachers sign up on their own, we could not check the completion on the site. Is there a reason why? My understanding is because they did not include the information about your LEA. And so it wasn't tied directly to you. You can email Moodle support@scoe.net, and I believe they can help you on the back end with that or give you a little more clarification on that answer. Well, let's see. Who will score the writing section? So that's a question from Jessica, and that is a decision, that's a local decision as to who on your team will be scoring that. And whoever that is needs to be trained to score that. So that's a local decision.
There's a question about will we be charged for the additional kindergarten books we ordered for this 25-26 school year since we included TK. I can read the Summative ELPAC excess material orders note. It says at the end of each testing year, ETS invoices LEAs for excess materials ordering during the primary test material ordering window, and for any supplemental orders, excess materials are calculated using the difference between the number of answer books scored and 90% of the test ordered by the LEA, and LEA is responsible for using and returns for scoring 90% of the answer books ordered, excluding the overage included in the shipment, and excess answer books K through 2 will cost the LEA $250. And this is for the Summative ELPAC. I'm not familiar with the initial ELPAC. Are you aware of any rules that are different for the initial ELPAC, JD?
I am not aware of that.
So I would reach out to your success agent. There's a success agent lookup on the CAASPP website, and you put in your LEA's name. It's under the help area up at the top, and it should give you a contact name, and they can look up your specific status.
There's a question about the testing manuals and when they'll be updated for the school year. I do not have a specific date on that. We usually receive an email that states when that will be released. Stephen, do you have any more information on that?
I don't have a specific date, no.
Okay, so look for emails coming out regarding the update of that. There's a question about assigning 3 users to access the test examiner completion status. This must be in Moodle. And is that just for the initial, or can we have more test examiners for summative ELPAC? Oh. You know what? I would reach out to Moodle support@scoe.net and ask for sure on that. I have the same people that monitor initial it's basically me, that I monitor the initial and the summative, and then I have one other person. So I'm not quite sure if you can identify separate people. Stephen, do you happen to know on that one?
I don't. I was tempted to go into the AST and see if I could find out. However, I couldn't get into the AST a little bit ago.
I
Don't
couldn't
know
get
if
in there
that's
quick enough right
cited.
now either.
Yeah, there's some sort of Google Spotify internet services outage out there. I don't know if it's related to that, but
Oh, okay, well, thank you. And then I see that Paul put the Moodle support at SCOE.net email in the chat box for those of you that have specific Moodle questions, or like that one right there. All right. Let's see, is there anything else? Can you share the tips?
what will tell
Okay.
us that a student will need to take the alternate initial? Well, the alternate initial LPAC is something that's determined by an IEP team. There is guidance, a guidance document that can be used by an IEP team to determine whether or not a student qualifies for alternate assessments. And that's a great tool for you to advise that your IEP teams use if they are not currently utilizing that. That will be specified in IEP, and then you will, once a student has that IEP and it's specified in that IEP, you will make that test setting, that assignment in TOMS for a student. A student will require that test setting to be set by you in order to assess with the alternate assessment. And then, of course, you will also need to have somebody trained and yourself have completed the LEA certification for the alternate.
Here's a question. Can you share tips to communicate student eligibility roster with test examiners?
I would this is at the point of new student enrollment, and I would always make sure that I'm pulling separate lists, and I would pull a list from CalPADS and pull a list from the SIS, and I would always compare those and ensure that these new students both had a SIS record and a CalPADS record. Sometimes there can be issues with what's been entered into CalPADS and what's in the SIS, and one would expect there to be a eligibility in TOMS. That would be my third list I would work through, is an eligibility list that's available in the reports tab in TOMS. So those three lists, making sure each of them matched the other, so that any students whose data has not been correctly input, that can be resolved immediately, so we don't time ourselves out of the 30 days before we even know that the student's on the TOMS eligibility list. So a lot of data cleaning and data maintenance to ensure that that's all correctly input. Sometimes a wrongly input date or a error on one side of things will cause like a primary language being on an TBD status that doesn't trigger initial testing will preclude the student from showing up in the TOMS list. So I always make sure that all those match. And also that as part of training, those site coordinators and can pull those lists for their site as well. Jadine, do you have practices that you use?
Those sound pretty similar. I do check that eligibility list for the initial, in Tom's, pulling that one out, but if it wasn't identified correctly, then like you mentioned, they won't show up there, right? But in Tom's, there is that, a tab there where you can check for initial eligibility for testing. So I recommend checking that one regularly. And then on
It's a
the
great
Tom's,
idea to, oh, sorry.
and then, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, it's also a great idea to include your site administrator and show them how to access the dashboard, for example, on the homepage of CAASPP, Tom's, so that they can see completion rates. Also, good practice to weekly or daily provide them a list of students who are eligible to test and who have not yet tested, or the status of those testing, just so they can see that progress. That way they can be managing and see the status of their students on the site as well.
And then there was a mention of the home language survey, and yes, home language survey, or HLS, should only be completed one time if their enrollment in California schools, right? So you can reach out to the policy department at CD if you'd like on that, but that's only one time in their enrollments. And then there's a question, what does a DFA stand for? And that's Directions for Administration. And so DFA, Directions for Administration, HLS, Home Language Survey. And sorry for the alphabet soup here in education. There are so many acronyms. And oh, here's another one that Josh threw out. What's a PFA? Josh? All right, what's a PFA? Preparing for administration, right? So
There's
good questions.
there was a great I'm going to type an answer here. I'm going to put a guide to acronyms. Back in the days of the CELT and the paper training for the ELPAC, there was a page, and I think it was chapter 2, that was a list of acronyms, and we always went through those. And it is confusing what each of those means, especially when you're new. And I dropped a link in the answer to a list of acronyms and disclaimers from from the manuals library, excuse me.
Yes, there was just trying to think. There was a resource guide that came out recently, and it had those in there. I'm trying to remember which one that was. So thanks, Stephen. You were able to put it together quickly, so appreciate that. And for those of you that are new coordinators, great questions. And, please make sure you're checking out the other new coordinator training webinars, because this is a place where you can get answers and help. And we were all new at one time, so always good questions. And Sarah, you're welcome.
Are we doing future webinars? We're doing some of the future webinars. You'll have to also have a chance to see from our colleagues who are also at County Office of Education across California. And so we look forward to joining them on some of the future webinars.
Yeah, Stephen and I just happened to be the first ones. And so you can, hopefully not compare us to the next ones, right?
Joe, I think Joe's doing it this year, Joe Valero.
Yeah, exactly.
And
You'll love Joe's jokes. So please sign up for all of the new coordinator trainings coming up. And I'll let Paul do his commercial on that.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's Joe and Aaron Gordon from San Diego County Office of Ed. So yeah, we have an incredible team, and thank you, Jadine and Stephen. And thank you everyone for submitting your questions. This is really helpful, and I'm hoping that the links that were provided will guide you to the destination where you can, get more answers and more information. So thank you so much again. Okay, so before we wrap it up, I'd like to go over a few trainings. And first, we have the new coordinator training. And we have one in a couple of weeks, June 26th, and the topic's going to be managing users. And then in July, we have the topic of receiving scores. And then on August 28th, we're going to be covering assessment systems and TOMS. You want to make sure you register for those as well. And then we have the AIM, which it stands for the Assessment and Accountability Information Meetings. And these are 2-hour-long sessions, and they provide coordinators with the latest information and updates on California's assessment and accountability systems. This year, our number 1 session, day 1, will be 2.5 hours, and then the second one will be 2 hours. So really 2+ hours in all. And just know that these sessions, each of which will have a designated topic, and they'll be presented virtually. And the topics are in your resource guide as well. And then we have the coffee sessions. And these virtual coffee sessions hosted by the CDE and ETS offer opportunities for LEA staff to ask questions, get answers about assessments, trainings, resources, and more. And they have a lot of information. So you want to sign up for those as well. And they're usually held monthly for most of the year. And we know that the next one is scheduled for July 8th. So definitely want to register for the coffee sessions. And then lastly, we have the California Assessment Conference. It's a call out for this. This will be the 7th annual CAC, and it's going to take place November 12th through the 14th at Riverside Convention Center in Riverside, California. And this conference is designed specifically for classroom educators, site administrators, assessment coordinators, and others. So please help us spread the word, and more information can be found at the link on the CAC website, and that's in your guide as well. And I believe that's it as far as our announcements go. And then we have, if you haven't already, please sign up for the Assessment Spotlight emails. You can find subscription instructions in your resource guide. Also, you can follow the CDE on X at CDE Assessments, and you can also connect with the CDE on Instagram. I believe, and that should do it, right? Yep. And that concludes our training. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us, and we hope that the information we shared today was helpful and timely. As always, we want to remind you that you're not alone in this work. You can reach out through the networks of coordinators in similar roles throughout the state, your LEA success agents, and you always have staff at the CDE ready and available to answer your questions. Again, I had mentioned earlier that there was a 3-minute survey. If you could please complete that for us, that would be very helpful and appreciated. So thank you. And with that, on behalf of CDE, my colleagues, Stephen and Jadine, we thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. Take good care and have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.